QS. We often talk about, actually Judy even talked about how the topics we need to learn are the topics we're told to present, and vulnerability. I had a moment at 12:30 last night that, let's just say my husband decided because the Lord had risen today that the kid would rise from the basement, so we turned off the Wi-Fi. and my talk wouldn't print, so I thought I would have to be vulnerable to ad-lib this today, but it did print. So what went into that vulnerability? Certainly fear, uncertainty, and comparison presents themselves as cracks and canyons along the way. Cracks and Canyons is the title of this talk. So as we explore the power of leaning into discomfort, and let's see what's possible on the other side. So in April, we're exploring the power of vulnerability, and last week Judy talked about the key steps in defining and gaining clarity around what vulnerability is and why it's important. Today and the rest of the month, we will be exploring what often gets in the way of being vulnerable and what steps we can take to navigate this path. If we think of vulnerability as a key ingredient into our personal transformation, we often do think that because it creates an expanded awareness of what lies below the surface. Looking through that lens, we begin to see how vulnerability is a building block for thriving and healthy community. When thinking of examples for this topic this week, one came to mind was the fact that last week I saw 4 new faces here at service, or 4 new faces to me. And it struck me that we were all vulnerable at one time when we came through the doors here and experienced this new community. And all of us have come back as we're here and have embraced the community or philosophies, and some have not because it didn't jive with them, which is fine. I've heard of Science of Mind teaching as being called a cult. I don't think it's people that have been through the doors, because it seems really ironic as we believe that take in the words or actions that you believe or resonate in as good and discard what you don't. Questioning the teachings has always been welcomed here, which sounds sort of anti-cult-ish. So what gets in the way of us being vulnerable? Fear, uncertainty, and comparison are 3 ways that things arise that can arise when we set out to live our life in a more vulnerable and authentic way. What we look at is something not to be pushed against, but instead opportunities to lead and befriend. What if we understood that each experience was a path towards greater awareness of ourselves and others? Ernest Holmes writes that something within you beyond all doubt and fear, something which is never limited by your acts or destroys your feelings. So he's talking about spirit. This is the only something that can make you whole. I found that during the pandemic, my feelings of connection to God and this community have certainly helped with loneliness, and knowing that Spirit has my back is certainly sort of hopefully up to my mental health. Anyway, and the fact that we're getting back to hugs is good too. Okay. So last week at the potluck, I was sitting at a table and all 4 of us have had multiple experiences of getting results that we wanted from affirmative prayer, which we also call treatments. One of the people said that she wanted to ask me for treatments more often, but she did not, and she wasn't sure why. The short answer came up was fear. not asking me, but saying her desires outside of her head. Can anybody relate? Fear can sometimes be a powerful barrier to vulnerability. It can seem like a vast canyon outstretched as far as the eye can see. Fear may be experienced in different ways for different people. Fear of what others may think, fear of trying something new, fear of rejection, or fear of not being good enough. Shame and blame are also part of that. So how does uncertainty fit with being vulnerable? To be vulnerable is to become friends with uncertainty. We love certainty. Often the thought or hint of uncertainty stops us. Most of us want a plan, and then a backup plan, and then a backup plan for the backup plan. I live with one of those people. I may have told this story before, but it really fits here. A friend and I are planning a tour of England this summer from a tour company. And the tour company hasn't met its minimum requirement of participants yet, so it's not necessarily a go yet. But I wanted to buy plane tickets because they're getting more and more expensive. And she was quite leery, like she wanted a confirmation. And I was like, let's buy the tickets anyway, and if the tour doesn't go, we have a list of great places to go, and we can just go on our own schedule. And she said, I can't do that. And I'm like, sure you can. And so she talked to her brother about it, and she said, she phoned me back and she said, I will only go with you because you're a world traveler. And I was like, okay, we have different comfort levels. And I said to her, we're going to an English-speaking country. Like England is not that different than here, but it was like totally, she hasn't been to the States in 20 years. So we booked the flight, and I didn't tell her that I have more than once, quite a few times, have found myself in a country alone that I didn't speak the language and lost. The last time I was in Nice with Vivian, and we didn't meet up when we were supposed to, and I sat there and thought, why do I get myself in these situations in countries that I don't know the language? But it's not, like it's an uncertainty I can deal with, because here I am. I was safe the whole time. I knew my way back. I didn't leave breadcrumbs, but I had an idea. So what some can choose as a barrier and open themselves up to, others meet with curiosity and move in alignment with truth of who we are, because I knew I was safe. And this awareness opens the doors and invites us to step through them. So Einstein made the statement, the most important question you can ask is the universe friendly? So I listened to a guru, and his answer to this was, most believe that the universe is indifferent or unaware of them. And the question being asked is, what if the universe is there for you? What if the universe is your friend? How would that look? Friends don't shaft friends. Friends have each other's back. I once, for a long time, thought I'd get Nadine to put a tattoo on the middle of my back, a symbol of God, just knowing, so I would know that God has my back. But then I decided I don't like permanency on my back, so I never got the tattoo done. But anyway, I digress. That wasn't in the script. So the other side of that is, so if the universe is your friend, the other side we ask, why does Spirit give us what we don't want? Or why does it give us tragedy? So the guru's answer was, so what if the universe gives you not what you want, but what you need to learn? So we all have heard the saying, comparison is the thief of joy, by Teddy Roosevelt. So comparison can impact our ability to be vulnerable, to be willing to risk, to be willing to step out and reveal our true selves. How often do we take stock of everyone in the room and then gauge our self-expression based on how we rank ourselves in comparison with everybody else? That one I kind of often. We may want to blend in and not be too much, or whatever that means in any given situation. This instinct or conditioned response may have us holding back and playing small. The opportunity exists to look at the areas that we are comparing ourselves to others or playing small, and begin to explore how we use vulnerability to harness the magnificence of our authentic selves. This comparing ourselves to others, I think I was in my late 30s and I met a woman that last name was Jones. And I said to her, I said, what does your family think of the phrase comparing yourself to the Joneses? Like, does that have like a lot of weight on your shoulders that everybody's comparing yourself to your family? And she says, we don't think anything of it. So they're not comparing themselves to us. So if that one woman is a representation of all Joneses, but. So choosing to be vulnerable enough to express our authentic selves is not always easy. However, the choice becomes whether or not we allow ourselves to be limited by experiences that attempt to stand in the way of showing up as our true selves, or to be willing to look at them in the face and move away. Rumi said, move, but don't move away fear from your move. It's like when you leave a city to get away from something, you bring yourself with you. So I have a story, and it's from Glennon Doyle. She has that sparkly book called Untamed. And the story that she tells is when her girls were beginning to beg to get their ears pierced, she said yes. She took them to the mall, and when they arrived at the piercing kiosk, Anna ran ahead of me, leaped onto the piercing chair, and announced to a surprised 20-something piercer, let's do this. And when I finally caught up, the piercer turned to me and said, are you her mother? I am trying to be, I said. Okay, do you want me to pierce her ears one at a time or both at the same time? I've never had my ears pierced, so I'm not sure how this is going. Anna said, both, let's do it, let's go. And then she squinted her eyes and gritted her teeth and flexed all of her muscles like a tiny little Hulk. As they pierced her, I saw a couple of tears that she wiped away immediately. I looked at Anna and thought, she is so awesome. Here, and she is also 6 years away from a felony. Her mother's words. She jumped down from a chair, buzzing with adrenaline. The woman working at the kiosk laughed and said, wow, she is so brave. Trish stood next to me, taking it all in. She motioned me to lean down closer, and she whispered, actually, Mom, I changed my mind. I don't want to get my ears pierced today. Are you sure? She asked. She looked over at Anna's earlobes, swollen like grape tomatoes, and Anna said, come on, Trish, you only live once. And Trish says, why does everybody say that when you're about to do something dangerous? How about you only live once, so don't get dead early? Then she looked at me and said, I'm sure. The piercer turned to Trish and said, your turn, honey. and I waited for Trish to speak, and she said, "No, thank you, I'm not ready today." The piercer said, "Come on, you can do it, be brave. Look how your little sister was brave." And Trish looked at me, and I squeezed her hand, and we walked away. She felt a little shame, and I felt a lot annoyed. So I don't think being brave means what we're saying it means. We all tell our children that we tell our children that brave means feeling afraid and doing it anyway. But is that the definition we want them to carry as they grow older? When she's 17, headed out to a car driven by a teenage buddy saying that she's going to the movies, but actually going to the kegger down the street? Imagine calling her and say, "Bye, baby, be brave tonight." What I mean by that is, if you're in a scary situation and you feel afraid to do what your friends are encouraging you to do, I want you to ignore that fear and do it anyway. Just plow through that and plow through that, your gut instincts of yours. No, I don't want my children to become people who abandon themselves to please the crowd. Brave does not mean feeling afraid and doing it anyway. Brave means living from the inside out. Brave means in uncertain moments turning inward, feeling the knowing and speaking it out loud. Since the knowing is specific, personal, and ever-changing, so is brave. Knowing is capital K here. Whether you are brave or cannot be judged by people on the outside, sometimes being brave requires letting the crowd think you're a coward. Sometimes brave means letting everybody down but yourself. Anna's brave often is loud and go for it. Trisha's brave is often quiet and waiting to do it. They are both brave girls because each is true to herself. They are not divided between them, between what they feel and know on the inside and what they say and do on the outside. They themselves are integrated. They have integrity. The ability to be vulnerable and authentic is often seen through the lens of privilege. There are many within our world whom showing up authentically is challenging and sometimes unsafe. This is the work, this is the call to action, understanding that fear, uncertainty, and even comparison are not things to be avoided, ignored, or suppressed. Instead, their presence becomes a beacon, a microscope in which we view our lives, our community, and our world. It is the close-up view that we can begin the work of removing the barriers to vulnerability and a life truly lived out loud. So I'm going to close with this affirmation. So repeat after me if you choose. I make friends with uncertainty. Knowing that it is part of the wholeness of life. And so it is. Namaste.